Hello there. My name is Caleb Cargill. I'm a software engineer. I've been in the software field for about 7 years now. And with that, I have been able to witness firsthand the explosion of AI onto the scene. That really started back in 2020 when ChatGPT was born, and that was revolutionary of, in and of itself. But that software has just evolved more and more. Now we have agent mode where you can give detailed instructions to a large language model and have it accomplish some task given enough detail. There's been this topic of vibe coding that has kind of come onto the market recently. And the idea of vibe coding is really mastering prompting large language models and having the agents build software for you. It's been wonderful to see the barrier of entry to building software decrease, truthfully, because those with less software programming experience can jump in and build software using these agents. Now, I myself, as a experienced software engineer, do not think that these agents are at a point where they can replace software engineers, but they certainly can help developers scale vertically and really just increase the productivity so much. What we'll go over today is a workflow where we use a couple different large language model tools and we'll build a prototype of an application. The application we'll build is an enterprise resource planning software within a manufacturing context. The way we'll go about this is we'll start out with a product requirements document. We will bring that PRD over to ChatGPT and ask for a prompt that we can supply to Lovable. And then we'll take the output from Lovable, open it within Cursor, and start to iterate upon it. So that being said, let's jump into this. We, right off the bat, have a product requirements document that I've put together myself. This outlines just some basic criteria with business, user, and technical acceptance criteria. We'll take that PRD and we'll put it into ChatGPT. We'll just give it a basic prompt and ask it to build a prompt specific to Lovable. I like to use these large language models to iterate even upon requirements. I find that we can really refine requirements further and further with these. So we'll copy that prompt that ChatGPT built and we'll plug it into Lovable. Lovable will think and build this application for us. You can see it thinking over on the left-hand side, which is pretty cool. Right off the bat, I can see that it's using TypeScript, which I did not include in my specifications, but it's not the end of the world, so we'll keep moving forward with that. This process, I think, took about 7 or 8 minutes. I've got it sped up in the video for the sake of time, but it did eventually finish building the prototype application. And one of the things I love about Lovable is that it will actually give you a view that you can interact with within your browser. So here we've got the application that it built. The color scheme is pretty atrocious, unfortunately, here. Maybe that's what we'll take a stab at. But we will see here that Lovable built us something with a lot of components that we can go through and click in, and it even supplied mock data, which is helpful just from being able to see how the software was intended to be used, so on and so forth. So it seemed to have picked up all of the requirements that I gave it, at least from a business logic perspective. This nav menu on the left-hand side seems to have all of the pages that I requested. And as we go through each of these, we can see that there is high-level information at the top of each page, which is something that was requested in the PRD, and the specific details down below include the information that I requested. So there's an overview of what Cursor was able, or sorry, not Cursor, Lovable was able to build. And the next thing I love about Lovable is that we can connect this directly to our GitHub. Now, I already have my GitHub account connected here, so we can transfer this code that Lovable generated into a new repository. And then we can clone that repository and open that up with Cursor. Now, Cursor is an IDE, it's a fork of VS Code. And what we'll see here is that Cursor builds the large language model into the user interface of the IDE. Over on the right side, we have a chat window that we can utilize, but just through the workflow of writing code, the large language model will suggest various uh, code to write. Their big thing is the tab feature where you hit tab to autocomplete suggestions from the large language model, and it can be really helpful. We'll build this application locally on our machine, had to install the packages with Node Package Manager, and then we'll get this running so that we can work with this inside of our browser. So we have our testing URL here. We'll open that up, and just like we saw within the Lovable interface, we have the semi-working prototype that we can interact with. So the first thing we'll do is we'll try to fix some of that color scheming, just going through and starting to review at a high level the code that Lovable provided. We have a Tailwind config file here, and I can see that there are color variables defined, which are defined in our index.css. So now that we have a little bit of context ourselves as a developer, we'll go through and prompt Cursor to go ahead and fix the color scheme so it's easier to read. Now with this, I'm not even telling it what the existing colors are. I'm not requesting specifically what colors to use, but it does a pretty good job typically of figuring out what to do. So here we see that it did change the color schemes. We still have an issue over in the nav menu where those menu items are hard to read. So that would need to be updated further. But right off the bat with very little effort, we are able to get this working and looking nicer. Now, the other thing I like to use Cursor for is to populate documentation. So we have a README file in here. It's empty, but that's not what we're going to keep it as. So let's go ahead and ask Cursor to populate the README file based on the contents of the code and give us some details about how to run it and some technical details. You can see it thinking again, and it'll populate this document. Whenever it provides changes, it presents it to the developer as kind of a diff view, similar to like a pull request, where you can see what the code was before and what the suggested change is, and you can choose to just accept all of the changes, or you can even go line by line and accept specific changes only. Go ahead and just accept this file, and we can view this in preview mode. A little bit easier to read markdown files that way. And we can see everything that it provided. It gave details on the tech stack, the project structure, and how to get started with the application, which is great. Now, just one final overview over the application that was built. This was really just a front end, really just a prototype, but it really gives the developer kind of like a working wireframe to work with really early on within the development process. Now, like I said earlier, I don't think that this tech is at the point where it could replace a software developer, but it can increase our productivity so much. Even just building the boilerplate code to build that React app, I couldn't have done it as quickly as I showed in this video. So to be able to get a semi-functional prototype so quickly is just amazing. This process took me a little less than 30 minutes total. I sped up the recording for just make it easier to watch, but the overall process took less than 30 minutes, which is great. I could see this being helpful to build prototypes really quickly. I could even see it being helpful in the context of a design planning meeting with a product owner. We could take in requirements from a product owner, provide a prompt to Lovable, and build a V0 for the product owner to review right there before development has even kicked off. What I find as a software engineer is that the earlier in the dev cycle that we can get feedback, the better. And these tools allow us to streamline that process and get that feedback very quickly. So I appreciate you watching this. I'd love to hear just more use cases of this tech, of these tools and other tools, and how this workflow could be improved and how this could show up in day-to-day development. Thank you.